Luke Cage Season 1 started the show and was the third original series in the Defenders saga, this time starring a primarily black cast. I remember when this show dropped, watching The Thing and enjoying it back then. Luke Cage was never a character I read much of in the comics. I was aware of him, and I have read him in things like the New Avengers, but he wasn't one I specifically followed, and I thought this was a good introduction to this interesting Marvel superhero. Anyhow, Luke Cage was ordered as part of Netflix's growing line of Marvel shows, a line which, more so than the other Marvel shows of its day, really ambitiously tried to channel the MCU in a show format, which very well might have been part of the reason it is some of the only stuff pulled into the modern timeline, as of the time I'm writing this. Luke Cage's rights were actually not with Marvel for a time, since Sony loosely tried assembling something with the character, though in 2013 those rights defaulted back to Marvel Studios since Sony and Columbia Pictures never found a way to make a Luke Cage film happen, something they tried to make since 2003, likely as a result of their success with Spider-Man and the popularity of Blade over at New Line. Amy Pascal seeming like the type of lady to loudly declare, "These black heroes are hot," sent from my iPad or something to that effect. Upon that falling through, though, Marvel Television started developing a show that they pictured making it into a syndicatable 60 episodes and hoping to land it on a newfangled streaming service. Though upon the concept by Netflix to create the Defenders series to mirror the MCU, Luke Cage and his series was folded into that realm and sent off to Netflix along with Daredevil and Jessica Jones. Chio Hadarai Coker was pulled to be the showrunner for Luke Cage, working previously on Southland, NCIS Los Angeles, and Almost Human, all crime shows, proving he could probably move into the streets of the Marvel Netflix world pretty easily. He wanted this show to be kind of like The Wire, but with superheroes, exploring the neighborhood of Harlem and the dynamics of its criminal underbelly, while also humanizing the streets of Harlem in a similar way The Wire did to Baltimore. Luke Cage was going to follow Iron Fist to market, but since people seemed interested in the character following his appearance in Jessica Jones, Netflix and Marvel decided to push for Luke Cage to drop before Iron Fist. The writing team was comprised of people who lived in places similar to Harlem, grew up in authentic urban environments, but also wanted to get some people who knew at least a little bit of game when it came to Marvel superheroes, allowing for an authentic look at the superhero genre, as well as the streets of Harlem, and kind of blend that together for this show, with both elements being very important to making it work. The series was coined by Jason Tanz of Wired as Neo-Blaxploitation, which the showrunner owned, and Blaxploitation kind of inspired the comics, so it makes sense. Blaxploitation sounds like it might be a bad name, like black exploitation, but it wasn't really the exploitation of black people. It is an exploitation film that stars black people. Films like Dolomite and Shaft, who are these sexually assertive black leads who act almost like folk heroes in their communities, are blaxploitation films, and both look at our main characters pretty positively, with both films also being made largely by a black cast and crew, including the directors. I wanted to elaborate that for this video, since on its surface blaxploitation could potentially come off a little weird sounding. But that was clearly an inspiration, as noir was for Jessica Jones and the dark dramas were inspiring Daredevil. They all tonally share a through line and some camp elements inherent in the superhero world, but they are all played in their own subgenres, following their own inspirations as well. This show was the first piece of MCU media to have the N-word in it, something that Marvel okayed Coker to do at his discretion. Coker decided, like issues of police brutality in the show or Black Lives Matter, it wouldn't really be an essential part, and also it's not really the show to deeply explore those themes. At the end of the day, still being a superhero show for a relatively broad audience with only slight serious themes, though he wanted to include both ideas in naturalistic ways that felt right to the story, since it was a show about modern black culture in a predominantly African-American neighborhood. Mike Coulter was previously cast for Jessica Jones, but others were brought on, like Alfre Woodard, who would ironically also portray a distressed mother who talks to Tony in Captain America Civil War.
Plus, it helps ease my conscience.
They say there's a correlation between generosity and guilt.
Though here, she would play a crime lord. Mahershala Ali would play Cottonmouth, and he would be later casted as Blade for the MCU, though if that ever comes together is kind of unlikely at this point, honestly. It sounds like that movie's kind of been in development hell for a while here now. Admittedly, even though these shows have been sucked into the modern, proper MCU, they were still considered second class at the time, and it really wasn't until Daredevil Born Again was in pretty deep production that Marvel decided to fully bring these into continuity. Initially, the plan wasn't to, and that Daredevil Born Again would kind of be its own thing, despite Charlie Cox returning to the role of Daredevil. For a time, it seems Marvel was abandoning all of the Marvel Television stuff, not just the ABC and Hulu stuff, so it's unsurprising that they would pull in Mahershala Ali despite being a major player here, or Alfie Woodard, who would have just done a supporting role in a Marvel film, now being cast as a major villain for this show. There are only a few examples in all of the MCU of people playing multiple roles on a major level. There's a lot of extras who do it, and these are two of them. The show, by and large, was filmed in Harlem, which made creating Marvel's Harlem pretty easy. No need to recreate the feel of neighborhoods you're literally shooting in. The color, art, and feel of Harlem were all emulated as well. Though I can't confirm that with 100% accuracy because I've never been to Harlem, but it has the feel of what people describe Harlem to be. If you've been to Harlem, sound off in the comments. I don't know. Alright, so Luke Cage works at the Harlem Paradise after losing his bar in season 1 of Jessica Jones. Additionally, he helps out around Pop's barbershop, Pop being a local hero in Harlem who seems to know everyone. Meanwhile, a gun crisis is starting to break out in the city, with a local kid, Chico Diaz, being caught in the middle of a weapons robbery of Cottonmouth's supply, Cottonmouth being Harlem's gun kingpin, more or less. Misty Knight and her partner, Raphael Scarf, are investigating these robberies, murders, and gun cases. Cottonmouth and his cousin Mariah, who is a local politician, are threatened by those robberies, losing tons of money and throwing their legitimate and illegitimate operations into turmoil. Luke starts looking for Chico, who Pop knew. Pop finding out he's on the run before Chico can be found. Some of Cottonmouth's men, led by Shades, end up shooting up Pop's shop, killing Pop, who has kind of an Uncle Ben moment with Cage.
Pop! Come on. You hear the sirens? They're almost here.
Inspired by the tragedy, Luke starts hitting Cottonmouth's operations, though Chico, who is basically hiding, is found by Misty's partner Scarf, who kills him, pissing off Luke Cage even further. Scarf, high off the murder, hopes to milk Cottonmouth for more cash, but is shot by the gangster and injured. This leads him to seeking out Luke, and Luke trying to keep him alive with his new friend Claire Temple, who he met in Jessica Jones. Poor Claire, just stuck on all this bullshit, I guess. Anyhow, Scarf ends up not making it after Misty figures out he is crooked, but the evidence against Cottonmouth leads to his arrest. This doesn't hold, and he's sent back onto the streets. Shade learned of Luke Cage's past. Turns out he is Carl Lucas, a former accused criminal who was experimented on in Seagate Prison and made into this invincible man, only for him to scurry off, changing his name to live under his new assumed identity of Luke Cage. It's a whole thing. They got a whole origin episode, which also features his dead wife, Reva Connors, from Jessica Jones. Whatever. Anyhow, Cottonmouth tells Luke he knows his secret to keep him away, but Mariah is pissed her political career is in jeopardy due to her cousin's lack of care, and following an argument, Mariah ends up murdering Cottonmouth and rising to his place, flirting with politics a bit, but ultimately choosing to take Cottonmouth's throne and using her understanding of politics to kind of elevate and legitimize what Cottonmouth was running. Anyhow, another element that hasn't been incredibly relevant to this point was Diamondback, who has been around, but following Cottonmouth's death reemerges to bring his plans into play. Diamondback attempts to assassinate Luke using a Judas bullet, an explosive round strong enough to pierce Luke's skin that was sourced from Hammer Tech. Justin Hammer from Iron Man 2's company, Gotta put in a proper Marvel Studios reference or two. Regardless, Luke is injured and Claire helps him through by accompanying him to the man who created Luke's powers at Seagate, Noah Bernstein, who helps save him from the Judas bullet, though while there, he learns his wife Reva was actually not as genuine as he once thought. Reva not being a mere psychologist and actually was involved in the experiment that changed him by basically pushing for him to be the one picked. This felt like a bit of a retcon for the sake of Luke dating Claire without it being weird, and Luke just banging out every character in the Defenders universe, but yeah, that happened. While this happens, Diamondback makes a super suit to kill people to frame Luke for random crimes and murders. So anyways, all this is great again, and they go back to Harlem's Paradise to catch Diamondback, but when they arrive, Misty Knight is there and she gets shot by Diamondback, and along with Claire is taken hostage. Diamondback and Shades basically annex Harlem's Paradise to keep the thing blocked off long enough for the Judas bullet he used on Cage to go into circulation, with Diamondback getting a contract and selling them off to the cops, who he hopes will hunt down Luke Cage. Basically, it turns out Diamondback wanted to frame Luke and either have him killed or arrested because they share a father. Diamondback being Luke's dad's illegitimate son, and despite being of similar age to Luke, then Carl, got all the attention as the pastor's son, and he and his mother got scraps.
When it came time for sentencing, the preacher convinced the judge to let his golden boy join the Marines. Me, juvie.
Blah, blah, blah. Diamondback goes to jail and his mom died. Now he and Luke are both back in Harlem and he has a bone to pick, wanting him dead. So anyways, Luke manages to save the people in Harlem's Paradise as the police break in with Judas rounds. Luke is arrested, but pretty much immediately escapes and is again on the run. Everything climaxes when a rematch between Luke and Diamondback happens at Pops' barbershop, moving into the streets. Diamondback, crazed in his weird supersuit thing, proving to the cops he was the one who did all the killing. Mariah is arrested as well after Diamondback's defeat. As it turns out, a woman, Candace Miller, who was at the scene when she killed Cottonmouth, was paid off by Mariah for her silence, but upon seeing Luke's heroics, decides to turn state's witness on Mariah, but Shades ends up killing her.
I'm right here.
So basically, Mariah gets let loose, and her and Shades are allowed to start their empire at Harlem's Paradise unimpeded. Luke Cage is released, but the police mysteriously get information about Carl Lucas, thus Cage goes back to jail to serve out the time for the crime he was wrongly accused of. Misty Knight failed and lost her witness and goes rogue to take down Mariah, while Claire, I guess, just goes off to find some other Defender character to hang out with. Alright, a couple first appearances here. Cottonmouth is a freaky looking guy in the comics and is a major heroin dealer in the Marvel Universe. He first appeared in Power Man 19, appearing a bit here and there, but I would never call him a major supervillain. In this show, he has his cousin Mariah, and he dies fairly quickly. He isn't a major heroin dealer, rather dealing arms and being a little less on-the-nose evil, and more of your standard gangster who toes the line. And he doesn't have weird shark teeth like this guy. Diamondback is a somewhat major villain in Luke Cage's comics, being part of Luke Cage's gang before Carl Lucas became Luke Cage, first appearing in Hero for Hire #1 along with Luke Cage himself. The plotline that he and Luke are illegitimate brothers is an invention of the show to add some more drama to their relationship and give Diamondback a motivation to kind of come in halfway through the show when Cottonmouth is killed, which I think works well enough, but by and large this plot is similar to the comics version, that he's just big gangster man. Shades is a similar character between the show and the comics, first appearing in Hero for Hire #1 as well, being part of Luke and Diamondback's gang. Shades is a henchman in the show and comics, more or less, but in the show, Bro is a total psycho and jumps powerful person to powerful person, whoever points him towards a target and gets him paid. In the comics, he's a black man, but here he's played by Theo Rossi, who is Italian, Spanish, and Lebanese, according to Wikipedia. I think this works well, though. This show has lots of black characters, so I think adding a bit more diversity gives the melting pot of Harlem feel, since there's a whole bunch of people in New York. Also, Rossi does a good job. He's a villain you kind of love to hate. He's a cheeky bastard. Misty Knight, like Jessica Jones, has a retcon first appearance in Marvel Team Up #1, but in reality the character was first fully realized and conceptualized 3 years later in Marvel Premiere 21. Misty Knight is a strange character, cop turned vigilante, working with street-level characters across the Marvel line. She dated Iron Fist quite a bit. She had her hands in a lot of pots, and I don't know. She's just kind of super lady these days. Raphael Scarf first appeared in Marvel Premiere 23 and was a troubled cop Vietnam vet who basically caused issues, never really being evil, but always causing trouble and doing somewhat evil things. In the show, he worked directly with Cottonmouth. Honestly, whatever, close enough, and it's Raphael Scarf. He's not that important. Sorry, Iron Fist fans. Luke Cage is the lead of this show. He is back in Harlem and just wants to lay low, but following Pops' death needs to become a hero of Harlem. The Captain America for the everyman, so to speak. He kind of has an Uncle Ben moment with Pops, but sadly, trying to honor Pops and avenge him the only way he can, pulls him into this grand conspiracy of gun smuggling, corrupt politicians, and a brother who hates him for how his father treated him and his mom. I want to rip the band-aid off and mention my least favorite angle to Luke's plot arc. Luke used to be Carl Lucas, a petty thief framed for a crime he didn't commit, going to jail and being experimented on. All that's fine, and it works well enough. And the secret past life ties into his kind of macro arc of running from his truth for a long time, running from the law, and eventually kind of having to find himself and embrace the hero he's now responsible to be. But they kind of undercut Reva Connors, his wife, and main motivation for the entirety of Jessica Jones Season 1. Turns out Reva was corrupted and nominated him for these human trials, being complicit in everything, and perhaps she never loved him. So Luke says, fuck her, then moves on. I think this was in service of him dating Claire, perhaps, but his whole motivation in Jessica Jones was Reva, and I felt this was a shaky attempt to get Luke to stop complaining about his dead wife so he can open up to his new lovers. He's getting involved with Claire. Previously, he was involved with Jessica Jones, and he even had a brief affair with Misty Knight. And, why does everyone need to just fuck everyone in these shows? Claire had an affair with Daredevil and Luke. Luke with Misty and Claire. Jessica with Luke. It's chill to not have every character be in some sort of weird love triangle. To be fair, Mike Coulter and Rosario Dawson have amazing chemistry in this show, but the fact he also had an affair with Misty, it just felt so pointless. Also, Luke can be motivated by his dead wife and start dating someone new. There doesn't need to be a by and large irrelevant plot, secret evil thing his wife did so they can just brush her off. I also think that could make for some interesting drama, as it did in Jessica Jones Season 1, where just because his wife passed doesn't mean Luke can't move on and try to find happiness, and I think that's kind of a good plot for a widow plot. It's kind of like Peter with Gwen Stacy. She died, but he still looks for happiness and keeps living. Whatever. Luke is pretty passive in this show until Diamondback factors in. Really, he just wants justice for Pop, and eventually decides he's gonna get it. He is wanted for the majority of the show, so he kind of just slinks around, hanging out with Claire or whoever else comes around. Diamondback has one side vendetta against Luke, who doesn't really share it with him. Now, granted, of the two, Luke had the privilege of being the son claimed by the father, so I understand Diamondback's motivation, but Luke just wants to be friends and doesn't really care that much.
You're more like Dad than you think. When I got shipped to Seagate, he called me Mistake too.
At the end of the day, Luke wants to be a hero, and by the end of the show, he ends up doing the right things. and even goes in willingly with the cops to clear his name, which is kind of a step into his future appearances within the MCU. This show for him is a journey of self-discovery, and I think a good one at that. Cottonmouth is one of the major gun dealers of Harlem and could really care less who is killed along the way, or the fact that guns are making it into kids' hands. He has this big framed portrait of Biggie Smalls with a crown behind him, which isn't just set dressing, showing he's a black guy in Harlem who likes Biggie Smalls, but also shows the big crown looming over him, implying that he is the king of Harlem. And whoever owns the penthouse at Harlem's Paradise is basically the one who runs everything. Which is why we see each villain in this show kind of get their turn at it. Cottonmouth, Diamondback, Shades, and Mariah all go in that room wearing a metaphorical crown with Biggie Smalls' lingering figure above them. Cottonmouth is arrogant, cocky, and brash, not making smart moves. He was a gifted kid who was pulled into this life and got totally corrupted. Ultimately, this corruption led to arrogance. Arrogance led to sloppy moves, which is when his politician cousin kills him to neutralize him as the indirect threat to her.
No! I did not!
Mariah is a seemingly straight-laced politician who is backing her cousin Cottonmouth behind the scenes, but at least first thinks she is above crime and above Cottonmouth. After murdering him, her smug attitude turns into a real criminal element as she decides to hands-on take over Cottonmouth's throne. The former matriarch of their family, Mama Mabel, ran Harlem, and she wants to emulate that until Shades tells her she should run it her way and make her own Harlem. Mariah is always on the razor edge of trouble, at first because of Cottonmouth, then because she murdered him, with Candace Miller, a worker at Harlem's Paradise, seeing the crime and being a lingering threat to her until she has her killed. At first she pays her off, something a crooked politician might do, but soon she realizes the only solution to hold her throne is through murder, with her having Shades take care of her to make her crimes unprovable. And you can kind of see Mariah loving the feeling of the cops knowing that she did it, but not having enough evidence to prove it. Her whole character is kind of like a Breaking Bad type arc where they start off decently moral, and by the end they've gotten rid of their morals for the riches and power offered within crime. Diamondback is in the background till Cottonmouth's death when he comes in to claim Harlem's Paradise, though ultimately the only reason he's coming into the open is opportunistic to torture Luke or Carl Lucas. He is the son of Carl's dad, who had him as an affair baby and more or less swept him under the rug. Once Diamondback's mom died, their dad totally abandoned him, and after he and Luke are arrested, he starts stewing in his anger. His brother is now invincible, so he gets hammer tech bullets that can harm Luke and a super suit to frame Luke for crimes like killing police officers. It all accumulates in a battle with Luke where he's defeated and Diamondback gets sent off to the Raft prison. Shades is the number 2, and I think the lease for Harlem's Paradise must have him included because he works under Cottonmouth till he dies, then under Cottonmouth briefly, but ends up under Mariah. I like that Shades is just ruthless. He just likes killing guys. Nothing deep about this one, and he's pretty good at it. He is the muscle, occasionally reckless in his ruthlessness, but also knows how to dress a crime scene and is fairly loyal to whoever takes him on. He's not gonna snitch. Claire tracks down Luke and basically decides she wants to heal the superheroes of New York after the events of Deadpool Season 2, which saw her without a job. Claire does doctor stuff and follows Luke around, being someone to bounce exposition off of, and occasionally uses her doctor skills. She gets in a relationship with Cage, which may be a hair undercooked, but as I said, Dawson and Coulter's chemistry works so well that I don't really care that perhaps the relationship could have used a bit more time to cook and a few more intimate scenes together. She is the Nick Fury of the streets mostly, and that continues to be set up here as we lean into the Defenders show proper. Misty Knight is a detective with some anger issues. She is uncorruptible and knows how stuff went down to the most minute detail often, but can't always prove it, pissing her off. At first she wants Cage, badly trying to bring him in, but soon She learns he is a good guy and that this is all a setup. Her partner Scarf was crooked, and she is mad about that, but also shows Scarf some compassion as he dies from his bullet wound, showing the complex nature of being a straight-laced cop with a partner you truly love, but who is also secretly doing these vile things behind the scenes. Cottonmouth is let out under her nose and later Mariah more than once. This makes her ungodly mad, compounded with the fact that Candace Miller is killed and Mariah did all this just to walk, as the hero Luke Cage is locked up for a crime he was convicted for years ago, but that he steadfastly claims he didn't commit. She doesn't see justice coming through the system, and like how Claire left the hospital in Daredevil Season 2, she leaves the police force to strike out on her own, inspired by the multiple heroes popping up in New York. Tonally, the show is sort of dark and depressing like Jessica Jones and Daredevil, but I think where it really tries to differ is adding the spur of hope you would expect from a superhero project like Spider-Man or Superman. The streets of Harlem really rallying behind Luke Cage and his cause.
Who to call when no one obeys the law, and there ain't no Iron Man that can come and save us all. Power to the people and Luke Cage the cause, and the cops got it wrong, we don't think Cage involved.
This I think kind of adds to the blaxploitation vibe I mentioned earlier. In the old days, films like Dolomite or Shaft featured heroes who were beloved in their town, and everyone knew them by their street reputation. That is kind of emulated from a superhero angle here, and I thought it worked pretty well. In a lot of ways, Shaft and Dolomite are slightly removed, but have some elements you could compare to a superhero, I suppose, so it kind of translates pretty well here. Though I don't think the fact that the streets rally behind Luke Cage really undercuts the wider Netflix feel of dark, gritty crime dramas. Lots of dark and gritty things happen here. Lots of characters pass away, and it feels slightly unfair like Candace. It is still the brutal world we were introduced to in the first season of Daredevil. Though I will say this show has some goofier moments mixed in, like Diamondback's weird suit leading to a dogshit fight between Luke and Diamondback. It's not perfect, but it still works pretty well.
I'll take being a bastard over being a mistake any day of the week.
Adrian Young was the lead on the soundtrack, which is a good mix of orchestrals and 90s New York hip-hop vibes with some soul vocals here and there to kind of spice things up. Basically, it was super well done and fit the show with pinpoint precision. It was also just unique for its time, and while we had some hip-hop infused scores with things like the Spider-Verse movie down the line, even that was more of the modern hip-hop vibe rather than this kind of 90s soul-infused hip-hop. I thought this was incredible for the material. A series of songs were also commissioned or licensed as well, notably the new song Bulletproof Love by Method Man, which appears in-universe as a freestyle by Method Man on Sway, a popular hip-hop broadcaster. It was kind of fun.
Bulletproof always gonna come second to being black. HB, you should know that. You from Jersey.
Oh, Jersey? Wow, sound like he's stunning on you right there.
It was a stunt.
Method Man is part of the New York hip-hop group, the Wu-Tang Clan, which is pretty essential to the progression of hip-hop, especially in New York. Kinda neat and marks one of the more lengthy real-world celebrity cameos in the MCU. This show has some really fun editing and good edits, but I think you know what I'm gonna say if you've been watching my other Netflix Marvel series shows, and that's that it is too damn long. I will say comparatively it may actually find plot lines to fill the time, but the big issue is some of the plot lines either feel pointless or overblown. I think you could have tightened this show to like 8 episodes at 45 minutes and say everything essential to the story pretty easily. Manuel Billeter, a cinematographer across Netflix's line, shot this show. I mean, he did Orange is the New Black, this show, Punisher, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, Ozark. This guy had his fingers in a lot of pies within the service and seems to be kind of a studio-type workman guy. When compared to the other shows, this feels flat and digital. The final street fight especially just feels so cheap. The action in general feels a bit clumsy. It is kind of just Luke runs in and pushes guys really hard, and then those guys fly off on wires. It does have moments, like I said. I think there were some inspired set dressing choices, like the Biggie picture showing both a pride for New York hip-hop and the King theme. So in that respect, there's some good stuff. Also, the showrunner seems to be a big fan of Biggie, having worked on his biopic Notorious in 2009. So that could also be another reason there's a Biggie picture there. So I actually like how much it ties into the entire through line of this show. Cinematography is a mixed bag, but for TV it's fine. It gets the job done. It's never bad, I wouldn't say, except for perhaps that final fight scene. I think these days we've been so spoiled with premium television getting more premium cinematographers and having more time to cook on these shows, and I wish I could have gotten more out of this show, but these were being shot pretty quick. Once again, they pulled that superhero gets a comic book costume and looks ridiculous gag, as we saw in Jessica Jones.
You look like a damn fool.
Kind of shocked they did this. In the films around this time, semi-accurate comic suits became more popular and standard. Obviously, I think for this version of the character, him running around in this weird costume wouldn't work, but people were kind of complaining about the fact that in the early 2000s, comic book characters were occasionally too embarrassed to be in their comic accurate suits. Look at Batman, always wearing all black. The X-Men had these kind of goofy, very early 2000s black leather costumes. That same episode also has this kind of cheesy what's your name type scene.
Luke, 418. No one can cage a man if he truly wants to be free.
I don't have people. I'm alone.
Solo.
These always come off so weird and cheesy to me, like, pick your superhero name, buddy. This show very much feels like it's trying to appeal to the Black American community. I'm a white dude, so I could be wrong, but I've seen some clips from shows like Power, and I watched some episodes from shows like Empire and stuff, and I feel like this matches the vibe. I think it was nice to see them tackle more diverse markets around this time. I think the show is good. This first season got a 90% approval on Rotten Tomatoes with a 79 out of 100 on Metacritic. Basically, people liked it. I like it too. I will say the plot feels a little bloated, but overall it's pretty well done, and the new and returning characters all work well together in this ensemble show that takes us one step closer to the Grand Defenders crossover show.